Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio in our Health and Spirituality program. We've been doing this program for almost 11 years, and we always are here with you bringing wonderful news. The news that life goes on, that we are here for wonderful purposes, and there are thinkers who have been sent from on high to write books that will teach us precisely that and much more. And today, I feel like in heaven because, can you believe it? This book, Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution, by Barbara Martin and Dimitri Moraitis. The subtitle is A Mystic's Guide to the Afterlife and Reaching Your Highest Potential. Isn't that exactly what we need? Yes. Why are we reincarnated, right? There are so many questions to be addressed. And here at Kardec Radio, we are always nourishing our souls with these teachings. And we have the honor of receiving once again at Kardec Radio, but this time in video, not only audio. Here, Dimitri Moraitis, he's here with us and we rejoice. I want to share with you the website of because he's the co-spiritual director of the Spiritual Arts Institute in Encinitas, California. You can go to spiritualarts.org and get to know more information. Dimitri Moraitis is a metaphysical teacher, healer, co-author of numerous books that we talked about before. He's also the co-creator with Barbara of the Spiritual Arts Institute programs, course curriculums, numerous workshops. And today, I could tell you much more, but you hear from him about this book that makes a difference in our lives. And we can not only learn, but transform our daily habits. Let us welcome together Dimitri with us. Thank you so much, Dimitri, for being with us today at Kardec Radio. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Vanessa, for having me on your show.
It's so good. When I pick up the book, it feels so good. It just feels good. The cover, the colors, the title, but more than that, it feels the security because nowadays, Dimitri, as you know, what's happening in the world,
Right.
the pandemic, a new war, and people being displaced for their homes, houses being bombed. It's so difficult. Many people are reigniting fears that they were already managing. And the timing of this book is so perfect, don't you think?
Yeah, I know. We have to pray for all those that are in trouble right now. But that's exactly the message. It is a message of hope. And we have to realize Earth is like a school. And sometimes our time here will be a little challenging. Sometimes it will be pleasurable. But the measure of our spiritual growth is not what's happening. It's how we're handling what's happening. That's the key. How we deal with life's opportunities and challenges. And, just like a storm, it comes, but it does go too. And this is not forever. What's happening now will pass. And, but again, we have to pray for all that's happening there. We wrote the book to encourage people to make their spiritual growth and their life an even higher priority. It's so easy to get caught up in the cares of our day-to-day existence that we can forget what's important in life. Just like if you really love somebody, you want to spend quality time with them, right? You don't want to just say, hey, how you doing? So we have to make sure we make quality time for our spiritual growth and to see that all the things in our life are actually part of the growth. It's not like, oh, here's my spirituality over here, here's my earth life over here. It's all part of the spiritual spectrum when you look at it from the proper perspective. It's interesting that the Chinese character for crisis and opportunity is the same character. So again, it goes back to how we are seeing things. The East Indians spoke of the world of illusion, the world of Maya, that we're living in an illusory world. They didn't mean the the physical planet is an illusion.
Mhm.
What they meant was when we try to see things through this limited sensing and
Yes,
say that's all there is, that is an illusion
that's an
because there is a greater reality right now as we're sitting here talking with each other.
yes, and you're right. But do you agree that we need to begin where you began the book? You begin, and I will quote from the very page 28. You talk about God. I love the way it's described because it goes hand in hand with the books of Kardec and the
Mm.
ancient wisdoms when it says God is supreme, definable expression of the unknown root of all existence. God is the creator of all that has been, is, and shall be ever, ever be. And I like when before that, you and Barbara say, your soul is not alone. The life that is you is part of the same life that is me. We are all part of an infinite sea of life.
Right.
I see so many people, Dimitri, struggling nowadays because they lost the north of their lives. And when you
Yeah.
bring God, there, the north.
Right. No, exactly. Exactly. We're all part of the same fabric of life. And that's what compassion is all about. Compassion isn't just expressing love to each other. Compassion goes beyond that, and well, not beyond, but it's the deeper expression of that. It's saying, I can see, Vanessa, the divine spark in you. You can see it in me. And that's what's compassion, because it's too easy to get caught up in the surface of things. If someone shows you a growly face, you say, oh, that's a bad person. But well, they may be doing something that is bad, but what's inside of them, the core of them, is not bad. And that's the part we have to connect with. And we actually do a series of talks called the Compassionate Earth, because if the spark is in each of us, of the 7 billion people on earth, plus the
Yeah,
same spark is in them. You
yeah.
know, Mother Teresa used to say, you know, I see the face of Christ in everyone I help. She didn't mean that figuratively.
Mm.
She could see past the severe ailments that they were dealing with and was seeing what was inside. And sometimes the doctors would say, you know, you're not doing enough for them medically. Well, she knew some of these children weren't going to live, but she said, I'm here to give them their dignity, to know that they have value. And that's important. We all have value. It's not a dollar value, it's the value of life. And that's what's most essential. Now, as far as you started right at the peak of the whole book. You got right to the core of it. You know, we are on a, you know, we've heard this, the spiritual pilgrimage. We're on a
Yes.
spiritual evolution. Well, what does that really mean?
Mm.
Well, what it means is we started in this divine, beautiful place. We were all born of the same God, regardless of the religious belief that you have, the background that you have, hardcore atheist, whatever it is that you're coming from in your belief system.
Yeah.
What we're saying is that we all come from the same place. We may have different physical parents, but we have the same, shall we say, spiritual parents.
Yes.
But when we started, we were like infants in the embrace of the divine. We were not, the potential was there, but the awareness was not yet developed. So the divine sort of sent us on this pilgrimage through creation to experience life and all of its wonders, to learn, to grow, and to become more aware of the divine within us. And by understanding that there is this divine within us, to understand God, and eventually return back to the source where we came from, but not as infants, as mature spiritual, and we call it co-creative beings, where we're participating in the creative process of life. You
Yes.
know, many people think of heaven, oh gosh, you're just on clouds and you're playing harps all
Yeah.
day long. It's sounding kind of boring to me.
Yes.
You know, it's the opposite. The higher up you go the ladder, the more beautiful, the more exquisite, and the more expressive you become.
Oh, wow. I love when you say that, expressive, because we used to say, "Oh, you work more," and people are like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to go there." Then no, but it's like it's the work of the heart,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And
yeah.
you talking about this, I need to go into this beautiful saying, because you talk about life beyond the physical, and
Right.
we understand it like we study here every Wednesday. There is a program at Cardiac Radio that talks about the afterlife,
Oh,
the Andre
oh,
Lewis books. And you and Barbara say, I need to quote some parts of this book because it's so clear. It's so, there's so much clarity, lucidity. And you say on page 36, the other side is real. In many ways, it is more real than physical life. And it's also not a nebulous, non-distinct, primordial energy. The spiritual worlds are well organized and structured, and it goes on and on.
right,
It's so
right.
easy to read, and at the same time, it's so clear. It goes hand in hand with all the studies we've been doing. And I think it's fascinating that you guys bring it to the general public, this certainty. It's so tangible. Would you like to talk more about it, the spiritual?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad at Cardiac Radio, you're studying these things, because
Yeah,
if people really understood that there is a greater beyond there, they would treat their life in a very different way than they are right now.
yeah,
So, and to think well, the thing we have to remember is this physical world universe is a created universe, and it was born of the spiritual worlds. It's a result. So the spiritual world, shall we say, gave birth to the physical. And now it's giving to the physical right now, and the physical is taking. An interesting psychology here, when we say someone is very materialistically minded, we think, oh, they want to grab more, they want to take
yeah,
more, they want more, more, more. And when somebody is very spiritual, they're in this giving mode. They're not thinking so much of themselves, they're thinking of others. So it's the complementary kind of quality there. Now, the other thing is, everything here originated there. In other words, if this physical universe is a result universe, it means everything that we have created as a humanity, the television, this computer we're looking at right now and
mhm,
working through, was first conceived in the inner worlds before it was, shall we say, objectified or created here in physical life. So that means the other side has everything this side has and much more.
sure.
There are realms on the other side that are so much like Earth. If you cross over, you don't think, some people, when they cross over, they don't think of physical, like life beyond the physical. And they see, well, man, I'm talking to you, you're talking to me, I'm not dead. You know?
Yeah,
And then when they realize they're not where they think they are, they do go into a bit of shock,
yeah,
because they psychologically hadn't adapted, which is why it's important to recognize there is a great beyond. No love is ever lost. If you've lost a loved one, you
no,
will reunite with them again. It's like going to a different country. They're somewhere else right now, but they're not gone. Just, I know they're not with you in the physical body, but they're there, and there will be these beautiful reunions later on. Now, it's true, there are other realms. Now, the other thing to remember, the other side is not one place,
exactly.
right? It's many places. In my father's house are many mansions, and these are realms of life that, in a sense, you could say are tiered. They're levels of consciousness, but they're also literal places you could visit.
Yes,
And what happens is, right now, you and I sitting here and everyone listening here, in our auric field, we are vibrating an energy corresponding to one of these dimensions of life right now.
right now.
And if it was, let's say, my time to cross over to the great beyond, I would take the light I have today, not yesterday, not tomorrow, today.
Yeah,
And that would determine where in this arc of development I will end up. It's not really punishment or reward,
no,
it's like attracting like. So we say the most important thing you can do on this earth is to earn light, because that you are going to take that with you the other side. You're not going to take your fame, your fortune, your good looks,
yeah,
but you are going to take your your light. And that is the most precious thing you possess.
So, as you're talking about the light and this growth mindset, which is a game changer, as you said, because then I understand the purpose of life. I can reframe my feelings, my understanding. And then we go to this specific part of your book when you talk about understanding the higher self.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it because we talk about this law of progress in spiritism, that we are always progressing. There's always another level. And here on page 109, there is this beautiful dissertation. And allow me just to say dissertation, but it's so beautiful. It says about this higher self in us. I see so many people who are caught up in the ego.
Right.
And I'm not saying I'm not, because we're still working on it, but they are just there and they don't know how to do anything else. So the idea that there is this higher self that we need to cherish, and I want to point out that there are pictures in this book, and I love
Yes.
this.
Yes. Yes.
And the
Yes.
pictures,
Yes.
and these pictures give us a beautiful understanding, and it goes hand in hand with what so many have been studying here at Cardiac Radio. And I want to quote one more thing. When a soul is immersed in material consciousness, physical, astral, or otherwise, metaphysics calls this consciousness the lower nature or the lower self. I think at this point, Dimitri, as this, and I'm just giving this an example, like the war that just started is an example of what it is, this lower self leading us into wars
Mm-hmm.
versus what we already don't want that comes from the higher self. Would you like to explain more to the audience, please, about?
Yes. It's funny, as Barbara would say, the part we can see, the physical part, is like the tip of the iceberg of who we fully really are. So yes, when we incarnate, and you brought up at the very beginning the idea of reincarnation, um, which is a key foundation because you we reincarnation, you have to think of lifetimes on Earth like grades in school, right? No matter how good you are at first grade, you're not going to suddenly be ready for your PhD, right? You're going to do terrific in second grade. So we need these lifetimes because there's just too much experience that we need to go through. So when we immerse ourselves into the physical body, this immersed nature, the part that's incarnate, is what we call the lower nature. It doesn't mean less than. Lower nature doesn't mean, oh, you're lower in value. It's almost like a positioning. It means it's the part that's here in physical life, but there's another part of us that is not incarnated in physical life. It stays in the spiritual domain. And we call this part the higher self. Now, interestingly enough, in the auric field, this you can see it above the head. There's this beautiful point of light. It's about 2 feet above the head. And this is it's like an eighth chakra, some have called it. And it stays in the spirit realm, shall we say, because it acts as like a guiding light. Some of the ancient mystics used to call it the master because it was the part that you're supposed to listen to. It will always guide you in the right direction. We all have a higher nature, and it is talking to us every single day of our life. The question is, are we listening to it?
Mm,
Now, it's not, as Barbara would like to say, that co-wrote the book,
mhm,
it's not there to give you the winning lotto tickets, the winning numbers or
mm,
the pick six at the racetrack. It's going to help you in your evolution. Now, if I'm so consumed with something that's not in my best interest, let's say I want somebody or I want a job and it's not the right job for me, well, the higher nature is going to try to say, no, no, this is the direction to go in. But if we're not listening, it's hard to follow that. So an obvious thing to ask yourself is, do you feel inspired
mm,
in your life Do you feel like, oh, everything's kind of humdrum, it's the same old, I'm bored with my life? Are you feeling that way, or are you feeling like, no, I don't have the answers to everything, but I know there's something there? The inspired life means you are connecting with your higher nature.
Mhm.
And it's not there to spell it out. Some people want to like a blueprint. Well, okay, I'm ready, God. Tell me the whole story from A to Z. Well, there's no growth there. We
Mhm.
have to do our own growing. There's a great teaching that says the seeking of the philosopher's stone sets the condition to find it. So we have to be engaged in the process, and then that will lead us to unexpected things that we didn't plan for, but are in our best interest.
And you talked about the way we do march in this quest for the higher self, like reincarnations are part of it, and there's a part of
Right.
the book that talks about it, reincarnation in the causal world, and talks
Oh,
about the true purposes.
well, what happens is as we evolve, we are trying to break the spell. So what happens is the soul does a funny thing sometimes.
Mm,
When it gets incarnated in the physical body, it forgets what it really is.
mm,
That it's a spirit, it's a soul, it's an immortal, and it identifies with its surroundings. So it says, "Okay, I see the physical world. I'm a physical being." Now we're supposed to break that spell. We're supposed to see the real self here in a physical body, right? Yogananda has a whole organization called Self with a capital S, realization. He didn't mean the narcissistic self, the
no,
glamorous self. He meant the real immortal self. So, yes, exactly, Vanessa. The whole goal of our spiritual aspirations is to awaken to understand the real us, the real us. And then when that happens, it leads to the next step, which also Yogananda talked about, of seeing God face to face while in a physical body. Now, he didn't mean a literal face,
yes,
but he meant enlightenment. He meant the awareness that God is real, God is there, and God is part of life, like the flowers and the trees and everything else. And we can have that experience, but before we get there, we have to do what you just pointed out. We have to find out who we are. How can we know, the divine if we don't know ourselves?
yes. Sometimes it's more important to do therapy with somebody who is spiritually knowledgeable as well than to do a whole PhD and don't know who we are, right?
Yeah. Some people have a hard time. They're really smart. I've heard this before. They get straight A's from like first grade, but
Yeah.
they can't do the PhD because it involves a creative piece,
Hmm.
and their mind isn't. They didn't train their mind to think that way.
Yes.
So you have to keep that inspirational flow going, and you have to let the creativity in yourself flow.
So for somebody, you mentioned about this, the people who are caught up in this, they are not happy, they are not inspired. You're repeating this word inspiration. They don't feel inspired because they are caught up in this. Somebody told me the other day, yeah, I have a work that pays me well, but it's not what I like to do. I don't enjoy it. I
Oh,
can't wait for my retirement. And the person is
yeah.
only in the 40s.
Oh gosh.
And I'm
Oh
like,
gosh.
that's
Yeah.
so sad.
It is a little bit because you're not living in the present, you're living for some hope in the future of what you might get. Now, there's another piece to this, there's two parts of what you just said right now. It's true, sometimes we may not be doing our ultimate ideal job, but we find ourselves in something there. And it is very important to put yourself into everything you're doing. When you get engaged, even if it isn't your perfect job, you will find much more pleasure. You will be much more of a contributor. No one likes to work with a sourpuss or somebody that's a grumpy thing. That it's not a fun thing to
Mm,
work with. I used to work in the film business, and it'd be, 12, 14 hours days with the same people. You want to like the people you're working with
yeah.
because you're seeing them more than you're seeing your own family.
Wow.
But at the same time, if you're saying, no, I know I meant to do something else, you have to seek that. You don't stop. the writers that, they were working, let's say, day jobs and secretly writing at the same time, right? I think, was it Tom Clancy that was doing that? He was in the insurance business, and he would keep his manuscripts in the desk and write them, and then he closed the desk when he had the drawer. And that's what we have to do, so that you are pursuing the things you need to. But yes, we do need to, pay our bills. Now, look at what's happening with the job market in this country. I mean, out with all the pandemic, many did not rush back to
Yeah.
work because they realized exactly what you said. I don't want to do that same thing again. I was underpaid and I wasn't even doing what I was enjoying. So they started to realize, they took the breath, to realize, I want something better in life. And now they'll have to strive for it, but that's a reassessment now of what is of real value to them. And you do have a purpose, by the way. Everybody is contributing to the great plan of life. So if you're feeling that urge to do something, you need to pursue it. I started actually in a career in motion pictures and television. And I was in New York, and then I was in Chicago. Chicago. And then I knew, well, if I'm going to pursue this, I have to go to Los Angeles. So what do they say? I followed my bliss. I had no idea, though, that I was going to have this massive spiritual awakening, and my whole life was going to take a very different turn. But had I not gone to Los Angeles and pursued the road I was there, I don't think I would have had that other turn, because it was the road that took me to get there. So you need to follow your definite heart and realize there may be seasons in your life. Things may change in different directions. And yes, you may retire from a job well done, but you're not going to retire from life. To the last day on earth, you're going to be doing something that's contributing to life.
You're right. And our friend John DeRosa here, he's asking a question that goes hand in hand with what we're talking about, and probably expands even more. Didn't Yoganand talk about associating with like-minded people in this quest for the higher self, Dimitri? Isn't there a part in which you say in the book it's important to be around people who keep you talk about aspiration?
Right. Well, of course, we're not walking the path alone, right? And sometimes it really feels like we are. When Barbara started teaching long before I met her, she said the key reason sometimes people left the training was at the insistence of a spouse.
Yeah.
If there was a spouse that said, this stuff is nuts, you got to stop doing this, and it wasn't that they didn't love them, they just didn't understand them. There was almost like a jealousy, if your spouse is doing something they really enjoy and you just can't get into it, you can feel out of it. Now, the message is to love them anyway, and love them even more. But of course, the more you can share this work with others in a genuine way, not proselytizing the work, but like right now, having this conversation, we're talking on a similar wavelength. So of course there's an enjoyment, but also there's shall we say, an education. I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. There's a cooperative process that's going on right now. However, I don't want to also say you shouldn't associate with those that don't have a similar, because sometimes that person that challenges you is also an opportunity to learn, and then they still have the divine spark in them. So they're offering things, but it may be on a slightly different level. I interact with many people that are not spiritually minded, and I find great value in what they have to offer. But I also have learned not necessarily to try to talk about this work. In the beginning, that was one of my mistakes. After my spiritual awakening, I couldn't stop talking about it. And I learned, and Barbie say, shh, tone it down a little bit, But it was, I was new, and I didn't know better. But certainly you want to have people that are encouraging you and you can share ideas with, and hopefully also challenge each other with a little bit to make sure, is what I'm believing. We have a section in the book on the false prophets. There are those who, quote unquote, pretend to come in the name of the divine, and they're not really. Just like all fields of endeavor, they're con people. So you want to make sure you also want to check your own motives. Why am I pursuing this? Am I running away from something, or am I pursuing something? What is going on with me? So always that, the great saying, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. So you do attract somebody according to where you are. And uh, unfortunately, there are dangers in the path, just like any pursuit of there are, and there are opportunities to grow too.
And as you're talking about this, it reminds me of this beautiful subsection in the book that says building your character.
Yeah.
And when we talk about raising children, and it's beyond just children, because children, we understand they are spirits, souls like us in the children's body. They're more moldable, and that's the opportunity we have. But we continue this immortal journey of building character. I would love if you could expand to that, because you're talking about the false prophets.
Right.
That's about
Right.
character. So,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. You're thinking there's an easy way out. Be careful of anyone that says, "Hey, enlightenment, 5 easy steps." Run the other way. I hate to say it, but we live in an area where it was the Heaven Gate people. 50 people committed suicide
Oh my,
because they thought they were going to some spaceship in the universe or something like.
wow, that's,
So it can happen, but yes, character is the start of everything. I mean, look at every spiritual tradition. It
mhm,
starts with quality of life, whether it's the 10 Commandments, the Golden Rule, the Fourfold Path, Eightfold Path, whatever it is. You can't. The joke is you can't go to church on Sunday and cheat your partners on Monday. You
exactly.
know, you know, it's you have to live it. And here we have to be careful of what we call spiritual egotism, because when we do study metaphysics, we do learn a lot,
Hmm.
and we can trick ourselves into thinking, because I know about that the causal world exists, that the etheric world, because I know these things, somehow I must be more evolved. And that is not true. There are people that are growing faster and better that don't even use the term spiritual, because they're actually living the spiritual life, even though they don't put that term on it. And there are those that claim to be so spiritual, but when you look at literally their character and how they're treating other people, and it's not very spiritual. So that is the absolutely fun. And that is, by the way, the number one way we earn light in our aura is through every good word, thought, act, and deed. Every positive thing we are doing right now is adding to our auric field. Now, having said that, when you have good character and spiritual awareness and metaphysics, well, then you've got a rocket ship,
Yes.
because then you've got what's called the accelerated path. Max Heindel, the great Rosicrucian mystic, used
Mm,
to say there's two paths to the divine. There's this slow, steady ascent, gradual, and then there's the straight and narrow, the path of the initiate. So if you've had the spiritual calling, it means not only are you meant to pursue it, but it means this is an opportunity to accelerate your growth. This incarnation, you've earned it from other lifetimes, and this is the lifetime where you can go, shall we say, faster. Now,
mm,
it's not a race with other people, but if you have this potential to go from, let's say, here to here,
mm,
you don't want to stop off here. You want to go all the way.
mhm.
And the calling is telling you, go for it. So the saddest thing, I think, is this has happened sometimes, people have had the calling and they don't pursue it. Either
Yes.
they're too comfortable in their lives or they're too afraid of the unknown. And it's a golden opportunity that somehow has been missed. So that's why I know it's not an easy path, but it's an incredibly rewarding one. There's no delight so sweet, there is no pleasure so wonderful as knowing that you've reached your spiritual potential, you fulfilled what you came here to do. That is what's going to give you the greatest satisfaction in life. There are those that have accumulated enormous wealth and say, well, what's next? I feel unsatisfied,
Hmm.
because they did accomplish a certain thing in their life, but that was hardly the whole of life.
And you're talking about satisfaction, pleasure, and I remember when we were in a study session in our spiritual side of Virginia many years ago, and one of the students said, "I I don't know what it is to feel entertained or the fun of life without going to a bar, without going to a
Oh my
party."
goodness.
And then you're talking about how rewarding this growth can be. They don't know yet.
They don't know yet. Exactly. They well, there's been the story of the people that do like to enjoy the parties and the bars and the things like that. And they, let's say later they have children and they realize, my God, this is so much more pleasurable than going to a bar. I'm helping to raise another soul. We just don't know till sometimes we step into those experiences to realize how much pleasure can really be had in things that maybe at a certain phase of our life we thought, well, I don't know how fun that's going to be. But again, it's there's nothing wrong with having fun. I mean, it's but again, we're not here just to indulge ourselves. We have to remember that we're here for a purpose,
Mm,
and it's our job to find that purpose. And of course, you're going to appeal to someone. I'm sure most of your listeners have had the spiritual awakening already. And what
yes.
they're trying to do is sort it out. Now, when I had mine years ago, I was not in metaphysics. I did not understand what that meant. And when I realized it was metaphysics, yeah, I couldn't get enough of it. And, Barbara was my teacher, is my teacher. So she helped me put it all together. I met her at a dinner party years ago, and I'd I'd had this awakening. I had these experiences. I was trying to put them together, and in one evening, she just seemed to put the whole thing. And I said, "Okay, this is the one I have to study with,"
Oh,
and I realized she was talking from her own experiences. I do want to share this with the book. The book is based on experience, 50 years. Barbara's been a clairvoyant from 3 years old. She was trained for 20 years. This didn't just happen overnight. I've been studying for 37 years. So you're getting, people write books. Oh, I had an out of body experience. I saw heaven, and it's great. They write a book about that experience, but we're talking about 50 years of experiences like this. So
exactly.
this is like an encyclopedia of knowledge, and we did write it to try to, like, exactly like you say, put, there's so much that has been written. We tried to put it all into sort of a certain perspective and a clarity to understand there is this incredibly beautiful, grand organization of life, and you are part of it, and you are contributing to it as well, and to get excited by all of that and to feel motivated to strive for higher.
Yeah.
Oh, looks like we got another
Yeah, it just froze for a second, but you're
oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were reading a question.
no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. I was listening to you, and I wanna just piggyback on what you said about helping people like sort out. And in the book, because most part of our lives, like 2/3, we are here awake, and then a third of it, at least, we are
Oh,
sleeping.
wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we learn with Kardec as well. And I can't forget when he talks in the Spirit's book about the importance, how the prophets use their sleep to, you know, maintain not only the focus, but get the information that they need to fulfill their purpose here. And you talk about the sleep and traveling to the world of spirit.
Yeah.
I think this one I love. I'm just teasing and inspiring
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Well, you're jumping again, Vanessa. You're jumping into the deep end of the pool and everything, and I
Oh,
love it. I love that you're going there with all these things.
you talk about spiritually prepare for sleep, and
Yes.
it's so important. And you talk, there is a word that you use that is so important: facilitate sleep time spiritual regeneration. We often
Right.
here at Cardiac Radio remind people that we are marching towards this regeneration mode on earth. and we can facilitate it every time we go to sleep. Would you like to
Absolutely,
explain more?
absolutely. Well, the ancients used to say, you sort of, they almost saw it like you die a little bit when you sleep and then are reborn the next morning. Well, we've learned now a lot about sleep biologically, excuse me, and the importance of sleep
Yeah, it's very
and
important.
the different cycles that go on. They watch brain patterns and all of that, and the REM cycle and all these different things. But what they're not realizing is exactly what you're saying, the spiritual regeneration that goes on. We are from the spirit world of spirit. We're returning to it, but we're connected to it right now. And in many ways, absolutely, we are closer to the world of spirit when we sleep. Now, often during the sleep time, the spiritual counterpart to us, what we call the astral body, is kind of hovering above the physical body and it's regenerating it. It's helping to send light and power. And if we're going through healing, it will help with all of that. And it does it particularly the first couple of hours of sleep, which is some of the most spiritually regenerative parts. So, yes, getting a good night's sleep is extremely important. But then there is this connection to the world of spirit. And certainly with the prophets and the adepts and things like that, you go to what we call the inner worlds consciously. This is not astral travel. This is literally going to the inner worlds um, to get literally instructions, to get guidance, to get direction, to get education. But it happens for us too. You don't have to be an adept. Now, they bring back conscious memory of it, but we may not, but we receive the benefits. So I'm going to give an example of this. It doesn't happen necessarily every night. For example, let's say there's a couple and they're getting ready, they want to have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting ready to have a child. Now, again, there's the biological part, which we well know, but it's a soul that's going to be born into that body. So it's not just a biological process that's going on. There's an incarnating process that's happening. And as you said before, it's a full soul in that little baby body.
Yes.
So what happens is the couple, and I know this sounds a little fantastic, but they're taken to the world of spirit and they meet the incarnating, the soul that's going to be their daughter or son. And there is an agreement. Okay, you're going to be my mommy, you're going to be my daddy, and I'm going to be your child. And then shortly after that, the physical incarnation of the conception process happens, and the incarnating process begins. During the 9 months of pregnancy, there's a tremendous process that goes on spiritually to prepare the soul for the incarnating life. And then what we teach is at birth is the actual, when the baby takes its first breath, that's the incarnation begins at that point, but it's committed to the incarnation at conception. So there's this beautiful period that happens. Now, other things happen. Let's say I'm going to make a life-changing decision, whether it's career or marriage or whatever. Sometimes we make decisions that will literally change the course of our lives. Well, we could be taken to the world of spirit for guidance to help us steer us in the right direction. We won't necessarily remember, oh, I was in this beautiful place, but we may get this inspiration. You know what? I know what to do now. We get it that way. So the more we can build the connection with these inner worlds now, the other side is not just for the time when we die. It's helping us now. The
Yeah.
inspiration is coming from there now, and it happens during our meditation. So yes, we encourage people to meditate
Yeah.
in waking state and to be receptive in sleeping state.
Yes.
Now, when I first started with Barbara, and she taught me this technique, which we teach in the classes of, the temple work, we call it, I brought back a memory there, a piece of it, and it was early on. And I remember being on a beautiful, like kind of like rolling hills, grounds and buildings in it was a very idyllic setting. But what was so unusual, what was so staggering was the divine presence.
Mm-hmm.
It was everywhere. And when I came back, I was on a high for 3 days because this was obviously one of the higher planes I had been taken to. but it also taught me not only is the other side real, but it is, and it's beautiful, but it's in its divine state. And I'm supposed to try to bring that same sense of divinity here while I'm in the physical body. It wasn't just, oh, good luck, someday you'll go there. So heaven is not just a place to aspire to. Heaven is a place to build in you right now, vibrationally, here, today, so that you will be at that heavenly level.
Wow. I feel your explanation. I've just absorbed it, and it's so inspirational. Every night, when we put our daughter to sleep, we tell her,
Oh,
what do
how old
you,
is she? How old is she,
she's
by the way?
8. She's 8.
8. Okay.
And we tell her, saying, what do you think your spirit guide, your guardian angel is going to take you? What is he going to teach you? And one day she said, I think he's going to teach me about how to speak Old English. And I'm
Oh
like,
my goodness. Oh
where
my
did
goodness.
that come from? I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. But I said, anything is possible, as you said. And there, if we practice this preparation, it's so important to be prepared. And allow me, Dimitri,
Yeah.
for the listeners to read just a few lines when you and Barbara wrote meditative prayer to bless your bedroom.
Yes.
I ask that you downray the purple white light into my bedroom, an area of sleep, to release anything of a discordant nature and uplift the vibration of the room in divine light and love. Surround my bed with the golden light of protection to keep me spiritually protected while I sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so important. It seems so simple, and yet many people don't know.
No, no. Well, we think of sleep now. Oh, I crashed. I was so tired. I just crashed. We
Crash.
don't call it even sleep anymore, right? So the big thing to remember is when the day is done, let it go. Don't bring your troubles to bed with you. Think of your bedroom as like a sanctuary, or your bed area if you're living in a studio, that this is like your sacred sanctuary. And when you step into the sanctuary, the day is gone. It'll get it, it'll there'll be tomorrow to work on things, but you have to. We tell the story about Winston Churchill in World War II. He had a couple things on his mind, right? you know
Of course.
how did he get a good night's sleep?
Wow.
And one of the things he did is, and he said a little, he had a little bit of a mouth. He said, oh, I tell everybody to go to hell. I say, Mussolini, go to hell. Hitler, go to hell. Stalin, go. In other words, he had to get these things out of his mind, or he'd never fall asleep. And how could he make, important life-changing decisions for the free world
Exactly.
if he was so exhausted and so consumed by the troubles he couldn't do it? You have to separate from all of that.
Mm,
And by the way, that also ties into meditation. Um, we recommend daily meditation
mm-hmm,
because it's your time to get in tune with that infinite while you are in a waking state and while you are receptive.
mm,
So now walking on the beach or walking in a beautiful park and feeling meditative, that's wonderful, but that's not meditation.
mm.
Meditation, the body is physically still. You are not taking in the stimulus from the outside world. If you live with family members, you say, look, unless the house is on fire, don't call me. One gentleman he was interviewing me. He said, yeah, I get in these deep meditative states, and my kid knocks on my door and says, I can't get the Wi-Fi going. So you got to let people know,
Yeah.
this is my space right now. All right. Let
Yeah.
me have it. And that gives you time to connect with the world of spirit while in waking state. Then you have the sleeping state. So you've got all this support going on. And then in active life, you're showing good character. You're applying the things you're learning. So every part of your life becomes this divine expression. And then how can your life not become more divinely oriented when you're living that life?
Yes. So you're giving us very practical exercises that can be incorporated to our lives. Some people say, I don't have time, but we make time. It's not a thing
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
right?
Make this the centerpiece. I
Mm,
like the joke. Okay, if meditation is your one-on-one time with God, are you saying you don't have time for God? God, next Tuesday, you and I, it's nobody else. I'll squeeze you in between these two meetings. No,
yeah.
make it the centerpiece of your day, and watch how everything falls together. It's the philosophy of tithing, right? You're supposed to tithe your first fruits, not after you pay all your bills.
Yeah.
You tithe the first part because you're saying, this is your money, God. And then people have noticed when they do that, they become more prosperous.
Yes. Yes. So it's a God-centered life that will lead us into this, uh, into incorporating these habits, these new habits. We won't progress if we don't have new habits. And you're giving us the instruction. And when you talk even about prosperity, there is here the meditation for prosperity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's about, and then the last chapter, of course, we can't forget. I don't want to, I think the book is so solid, it's so nurturing and nourishing for us that it's worthwhile. Sometimes I just want to hold it dear to my heart because I
I can see
feel,
all the tags you put on it.
yes,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
amazing. And then you and Barbara crown the book with this chapter 18. The road to heaven is paved with love. I
yeah.
know people talk about love, Dimitri, so much, and it seems like, yeah, love, love, love. But the type of love we're talking about here in this chapter is the real love.
Well, of course it's love. How can you, again, to quote the Bible, how can you love God in whom you do not see if you do not love those whom you do see?
Mhm.
We have to understand that love is the foundation of everything. Um, you know, it's interesting when some of the chelas in the real ashrams in India would study with the gurus, they got a little bit headstrong. They thought, I'm going to learn to meditate. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. And then the guru had them working in the roughest neighborhoods in town, helping the most destitute. And the beginnings of, why am I doing this? They were trying to break that ego and say, it is about love. It's about what you're giving, not what you're getting. So if you're thinking just what am I getting out of this, you're not going to climb the spiritual ladder. You climb the spiritual ladder by giving more and more and pouring yourself into life. The more you do that, the more you do it in love, the more you're willing to take time for another person and help them out. All those things, even if you're not getting gold stars for all your efforts, it's adding up. And that will take you. Every step in the journey is literally paved in love.
Mhm. And when we talk about, you talk about hope, the other facet you need on the spiritual path of attainment is hope,
Yes.
especially at this time on earth, reminding people hope and faith walk hand in hand. And I think that's the ultimate message we want to um, give to people. And when I see the pictures of the book, I want to show to people again at
Yeah,
least one
that
or
was done by a beautiful,
two.
wonderful artist who did.
Really.
He worked with another clairvoyant for years, Flower Newhouse. So
Oh,
he was used to working with inner world visions, and so we would give him descriptions, and then he would go off and do these amazing. And what we tried to show is not just sort of like a, a travel log of the inner worlds,
yeah.
but the stages of growth. There's 8 illustrations, and each illustration not only shows the quality of the other side, but a stage in the evolutionary process from spiritual awakening to literally growing to heaven.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
And it brings so much hope to us. I think that's the word we want to hold on to as
hmm
the current state of society nowadays on earth, trying to end a pandemic, and then these new conflicts showing up, just expressing how they are inside of us and the hope that we all raise above it, conquering our higher self. What would you like to share with us in your final comment just for today, Dimitri? Because we want you back in the
Okay.
near
No,
future.
I really appreciate the thoroughness of how you handled all of this. Um, Well, what you're saying, the message from the higher has always been the world is getting better, not worse. There will be dark hours. It's part of the nature of life, but we're heading towards a brighter day. And to follow your spiritual calling, it will lead you to unimaginable places in your life.
Yes. Thank you so much. Rihanna from South Africa, our dear friend and host at Cardiac Radio, is saying, Walt Disney believed in rooms with energy. You use the rooms in your energy only for what it is for. And you can eat on your bed or work and expect to have a peaceful night.
Yeah.
That's a good one, right?
Yes, I know that's you have to. Yeah, it's important. It's important to do that, to let the spaces be what they are for. That's true. I didn't know about Walt Disney believing in rooms with energy. That's interesting.
That's
Thank you for
interesting.
sharing that. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And Carol, who is also a host at Cardiac Radio, she's watching you and she's like, she's asking us to do what you're saying, embracing this giving paradigm. And we cannot thank you enough, Dimitri, for being here with us. And especially for Barbara and you putting all
Yeah.
this effort together,
It was a
bringing,
labor of love. Yeah.
as John DeRosa says here, he's also a host of Cardiac Radio. He's saying everything that you guys are saying are so aligned with what we've been learning in Spiritism at Cardiac Radio, and it brings to us this certainty that life is worthwhile
Yes,
working for. Right?
absolutely. And congratulations on the good work you're doing. You
Thank you.
know. Yeah,
It
yeah.
means a lot to us to have you here, your support, your teachings, and we'll be in touch with you. And
Okay, sounds
Barbara,
good.
you'll have more, Dimitri.
All right, would enjoy it. I enjoyed
All
it
right.
very much.
Thank
Okay,
you very
thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Dear friends, we hope you have enjoyed this wonderful journey, recapping our very essence and the goals of life. We hope you're inspired. We hope that you're feeling greater hope and more willingness to love. We wish you a lovely day, and don't forget, stay tuned at Cardiac Radio because here we are always nourishing our souls. Thank you, friends.